You are right. It is DBA710 and it's week 5. Now, as we're approaching spring break, I thought it might be time to liven things up a little bit with a little change of music and a little different locale. So here we are thinking about where we're going to go for spring break. This week we're going to be talking about contingency theory as our stream of management theories continues. And I'll be talking a little bit about streams of literature, how they're defined, and what difference it makes. The week 5 readings are as listed. We have a variety of views on contingency theory and management, and you'll find that contingency theory actually supplies the basis of a number of different streams of literature that come from it. In fact, if you go over to look at leadership theory, and this will be mentioned in some of the readings, there's also a school of thought regarding contingency theory for leadership also. So these are related. And again, we're moving our way forward in time, and consequently there's a lot more literature available. There are many more journals publishing in the field of management and leadership, and consequently there's going to be just bigger and broader streams of literature. And with that, I'd like to give you sort of an applied picture of how these theories become used. Now, this may be familiar to some of you in the business field. It's called the BCG, which stands for the Boston Consulting Group Matrix, and this was developed when a company, like a conglomerate, has multiple businesses that they're in and they're trying to manage their portfolio of businesses. The question was, well, should you treat them all the same? And the theory which came out of this says no, you don't. It depends on the situation of that particular business. So this one's laid out in a two-dimensional grid, and one dimension shows the market share from low market share to high market share. The other dimension shows the market growth potential from low to high. Then based upon these two dimensions, the grid is divided into 4 separate quadrants, and depending on the positioning, the strategy that one would use for that particular business would be relevant to that particular position. For example, stars who have high market share and high market growth potential, well, those are great places to invest money. Cash cows, on the other hand, are stable businesses that are probably going to be entering a period of decline, but for the time being you have a high market share, and consequently those, as the name implies, can be milked for cash to fund the stars and perhaps the question marks. The dogs have low market share and low market growth potential, and so those should be liquidated. The question marks at this point have a high potential but low market share, so the question is, can a company pour enough money in and come up with enough innovation to move them from a question mark to a star category? The idea again is that individual businesses will move through this quadrant as markets mature and new things arise. So this is kind of an applied version of contingency theory, which says the way you manage depends on the nature of the particular business and what position they're in strategically. Now, this is just one approach, one use of contingency theory. There are a lot of other ones that deal with the, as you'll see in the readings, deal with the organization and the culture of the organization, the nature of management, the type of industry or business that you're in. So there's a lot of different aspects to it. So the discussion for this week, of course, is going to be based upon the contingency theories of management, and I'd like you, as we've been doing, to see how these theories then fit into the overall field of management, the evolution of management thinking, how they relate to previous week's readings, what's new, how these relate to systems theory, and then as we move into next week, we'll begin to explore newer theories. But again, you need to know what the foundation is, what the origins are of the newer theories, and that's what we've been doing building up to this particular point. Okay, so any questions about that, again, send me an email or give me a call, ask me what I'm thinking about. But by this time, everybody seems to have a pretty good idea about what we're trying to do. And what we are trying to do is establish an understanding of the streams of literature in the management field. So I asked you in last week's discussion session, what you thought streams of literature were. And I just wanted to get an idea of what your thinking is of this particular area. And, everybody answered from their own perspective, pretty effectively. And I hope you read everybody else's contribution, because that, again, helps you understand the different points of view on it. Now, this is my point of view. You might find other points of view, but basically, when we're looking at a stream of literature, and I'm looking at it from the perspective of a chairperson on a dissertation committee, or many dissertation committees, what we're looking for at streams of literature is all the material that's been published on a particular topic. Okay, everything. Books, research papers, speeches that were given, monographs, working papers. Basically, if you're doing a complete literature review on a stream of literature, it's everything. Okay, that's impractical in some cases, but we'll talk about that in a second. Generally, the subject that the stream of literature is going to be based on is based upon theory. Many times multiple theories, because the stream of literature actually develops new theories as the thinking and work on the subject continues to appear. So you're not going to find streams of literature that don't have associated theory, and sometimes that's a problem depending on what students are thinking about for their topics. The stream of literature is made up, as I said, of published material. The best published material comes from top-notch journals. Those are kind of the gold standard. When we move down the ladder in terms of peer-reviewed journals, the less popular ones, the less rigorous ones, they're part of the review, they're part of the literature, but they're not quite the same standard as the others. And then finally, when we move into non-peer-reviewed, those are considered not as important. You may get some good ideas, but when you start writing a literature review, 85 to 90% of what you're writing will come from peer-reviewed journals. When you're writing a lit review, you are trying to stay within a stream of literature. And again, this is sometimes a little bit of a problem, because people start writing and they like to show that they know something else that's outside the field. Well, that's not what we're trying to do in this particular case. We're trying to learn to focus in on a particular field, in a particular stream of literature, and keep everything nice and tightly focused. So you might ask, logically, so what could be a possible subject for a stream of literature? Could it be anything? And technically, yes, almost anything could be considered the subject for a stream of literature. But from a practical standpoint, meaning that you need to know everything about that subject, you want to have it fairly narrowly defined. It has to also, again, have a theoretical basis. And I'll show you what I mean with an example. Now, since we haven't really studied leadership in great detail, one might think that leadership would be a good stream of literature. However, if you actually start studying leadership, you realize that it's more of an ocean of literature, not a stream of literature. And there are multiple, hundreds of thousands of streams of literature within the field of leadership. And consequently, you can't really say, I'm going to do a dissertation involving leadership, because it's like saying, well, I'm going to do a dissertation based on the universe. It's sort of like, it's too big. There's no way you can possibly cover it. You've got to focus it on down. So one thing is, you've got to stay narrow. You have to be looking in an area that's well defined and understand the various theories and components that make up this huge subject into the various streams that comprise it. But on the other hand, you may think you have a good topic, but there's no theory behind it. There's no established literature stream. So when you go in and start searching through the library for something, for example, recently I had a student who wanted to do dissertation topic on social media in organizations. Basically, there's nothing there. It's certainly talked about, it's written about in popular press, trade journals, but there's no theoretical basis or connection to anything that's been published at this point. So simply choosing a topic because it seems to be interesting, or it seems to be relevant to your job, or something that is in the news and kind of a hot topic, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to have a stream of literature. And you have to have a stream of literature. And I'll tell my students that you have to choose your primary stream of literature from your concentration area. So if you're in the leadership area, your primary stream of literature has to come from leadership. If you're in marketing, your primary stream of literature has to come from marketing. That's the field that you should know the most about. You should be more familiar with all the theories and all the literature in that particular field. And so that should be your primary, from that field you should be choosing a primary stream of literature for your topic. So, as you can see through this class, the general area of management theory, we started with Taylor, and we saw how that kind of originated the stream, at least as far as we were concerned. And then we added some additional theories coming from Fayol and Weber, and then Follett and the human relations movement started with the Hawthorne experiments with Mayo, and then we talked a little bit about Maslow and how the social psychology people and motivational people started entering the picture. And then we moved to systems theory, and we saw how Miller's theory developed another viewpoint on how to look at organizations and management within them. Boulding was one of the contributors to that field. Herb Simon was also a major contributor to that field, and now we're moving into the contingency theories. Lawrence and Lorsch are important in that particular field. So we'll see a building of these streams of literature all contributing to a general field called management theory. But as you can see from the map, even these particular components, these different streams feeding into the river, all have tributaries that feed into those. So the idea is that there's a vast network and connection of literature, some directly related to the subject or topic that you're talking about, some kind of tangentially related. But the idea is you become kind of aware of the whole map and where things come from. Now, this provides, I think, one viewpoint, but I actually like the idea of a tree where what you're interested in studying, for example, this week we're going to be looking at contingency theory, you actually can see where it came from, where the roots of the particular theory came from. And you should be able to tie what we see as contingency theory to prior theories coming from the classical theories, the human relations theories, and the systems theories. Primarily the systems theories because those were the direct predecessors for the contingency theories. But then also in terms of the subsequent theories, subsequent research, contingency theory formed the basis for SWOT analysis and studies in how organizational culture affected management, and leadership theories. As I said earlier, there's a whole area of leadership called contingency leadership. There's game theory and strategy, which came out of contingency theories. There's global management, which we'll be talking a little bit about next week, and stakeholder theory was another one that came out of this more recently. So the tree of literature kind of shows where it came from, whatever you're particularly looking at one point, what it evolved out of, what the roots were, and then where it went into the future and which things are connected to it. Now, this is extremely simplistic, and again, each one of the areas that I've noted on this tree are huge areas in their own. So you really need to think about, how do I break things down to a point where it's something that's going to be manageable, that I can actually think of as a topic. So let's break it down. And again, we're starting at the very top. And you might think of this, you could think of a university as having different disciplines. So they may have their College of Natural Sciences, their College of Engineering, their College of Humanities, and so on. So one of the areas or colleges they might have would be social sciences. And then within social sciences, generally you'll have psychology and sociology, and business usually falls into that. And that's the path that I'm going to be following here. And within business you have different, well, we would call them departments. In larger universities you'll have multiple people, multiple faculty members who belong to a particular department, such as the marketing department or the finance department. So let's suppose we have a whole management department. And then within management, we're even going to have specializations. So particular faculty members will be specialists in particular areas. So they have organizational behavior as a component of management, strategic management, leadership. So let's suppose we're interested in working in strategic management. That doesn't mean we won't know anything about the other subjects, but that'll be our area of specialization, and we'll know more about that than anything else. Now, even within the field or specialization called strategic management, there are many different schools of thought. Okay, there may be schools that deal primarily with Mintzberg's Design School of Strategic Management or Michael Porter's Five Forces. Harvard was very much influenced by Porter's theories and developed their strategy research and classes around Porter. More recently, Jay Barney has the resource-based theory school of strategic management. So again, we're breaking it down even further. But even this is too broad. You couldn't just write about the five forces. You would have to choose one of the components of it. Michael Porter developed theories on competition coming from economics, but then he broke it down into value chain analysis and strategic groups and generic strategies. So there's a whole range of things within the particular theory that Porter developed. Then let's suppose that we're interested in his concept of strategic groups. So within strategic groups, now we might look at particular components, ways of defining what strategic groups are. And obviously, they would be different from a retail environment to an industrial environment. But suppose you're interested in looking at strategic groups within emerging markets. Well, then the question would be, which emerging markets? Are you looking at Eastern Asia? Are you looking at Africa? Are you looking at South America? So here you would choose Africa. So you can see, before we've even come up on what we would consider a topic, we've narrowed a stream of literature down from, all of management or all of strategic management into a particular school of thought, into a particular part of that school of thought, into a particular component, and then into a particular area. And you could even go further, and you might say, well, you can't study all of Africa. It's a huge country, and there are many emerging markets. So are you interested in the area around South Africa? Are you interested in sub-Saharan Africa? Are you interested in the far eastern part of Africa, which is more a component of the Middle East? What part of Africa are you really interested in studying emerging markets? So as you can see, by the time you get down to the details of what you're going to be studying, your stream of literature has been narrowed down from a huge ocean of literature down to a fairly specific stream, that would be a good area to work, where you could thoroughly research that particular area. So, just to liven it up a little bit, again, I get lots of proposals on what would be good dissertation topics. Generally, latte sizes would probably be narrow enough, but probably not have a stream of literature associated with it. Notice this one is in the Department of Marine Biology, so would a dissertation on Baywatch be appropriate? Perhaps in a different school. So what, in a school such as entertainment or video arts or something like that, maybe Baywatch would be an appropriate dissertation, but it has to be appropriate to the department that you're doing it in. Okay, well, the keys to success. First of all, as you're looking through the literature, start to identify the differences and similarities between the different theories. Look for the underlying DNA, not just at the surface level, but try to understand what's going on with the theories that links them together. But in addition to tying things together, you're going to be looking for divergent viewpoints, people who say, this doesn't make any sense. Maybe that was the best knowledge we had at the time, but that doesn't make any sense now. In fact, if you look at various views on the origin of the universe, they vary from time to time, and it can be radically different. Or what caused the extinction of the dinosaurs? Again, at one point there was a theory that it was caused by a giant volcano that caused the cooling of the earth, and then it was a theory that now it's sort of like it was a meteor that hit the earth. So there would be different points of view even within an area such as management. Now, this may sound like a huge task, but you've got enough material behind you now, and that's the advantage of kind of staying focused within a particular area, is you can start to use the material that you've already done. You can utilize sources from previous weeks to establish your continuity. You don't have to go search for things that you already have. If you find a way to connect it to systems theory or you connect it to human resources relations theories, that's fine. You can use those sources from before. So, don't get depressed, don't get discouraged. It's just the process that you need to go through here. So until next time, leave you with a little uplifting melody and a little bit of dancing. So until next time, goodbye and good luck.